The hook. The marketplace was alive with voices, sounds, and colors. Traders shouted the price of fruit, children laughed and ran through the crowd, and merchants sold tools, spices, and cloth from across the stars. It was a place of life and noise. But whenever she entered, silence followed. The alien girl walked slowly, her cloak pulled tight around her thin shoulders. Behind her padded the creature, her pet. It was not small like a dog, nor gentle like a cat. It was large, heavy, with strange scales across its back and eyes that glowed like embers in the dark. Its teeth were sharp, its claws long, and its breath hissed like steam escaping a broken pipe. The moment people saw it, their faces turned pale. Mothers pulled children close. Merchants shut their stalls. Crowds scattered like dry leaves in the wind. Even the guards, trained and armed, kept their distance. No one wanted to be near the girl or her beast. She felt every glance, every whisper. Monster, curse, danger. These words followed her everywhere she went. She had grown used to the fear in their eyes, but it still cut her heart every time. The girl lowered her head, clutching the strap of her bag tighter. She had only come to buy food, simple bread, dried fruit, and water. But the fear made her steps heavy. She wanted to leave quickly, before someone shouted or threw stones again. Behind her, the pet growled, low and deep. People shrank back even farther. It had never attacked without reason, but no one believed her when she said that. To them, it was a beast waiting to strike. And so she walked alone, always alone. But that day, something was different. As she passed through the center of the marketplace, she felt a gaze that was not filled with fear. It was steady, calm, and curious. She lifted her eyes slightly and saw him, a human man, standing by a fruit stall. Unlike the others, he did not move away. He did not hide behind baskets or grip a weapon. Instead, he leaned against the stall casually, his arms crossed, his eyes fixed on her. There was no hatred in his look, no fear, only interest. The girl quickly looked away, her heart skipping. Surely he was like the rest. Surely he would run too. Yet when she glanced again, he was still there, still watching her with the same steady gaze. Her pet noticed too. It stopped, its glowing eyes narrowing at the human. The air grew tense, and the crowd held its breath, waiting for the creature to strike. But the human did not flinch. He did not back away. Instead, he took one slow step forward. The girl's breath caught. No one ever came closer. No one dared. The human spoke, his voice calm but clear. Your pet. It's not what they think, is it? The marketplace froze. Whispers ran through the crowd. People gasped. Some thought he was mad. The girl's lips parted, but no sound came out. She stared at him, stunned. For years she had heard nothing but fear and anger. No one had ever asked her that. Her pet let out a low growl, but the human simply tilted his head. His eyes stayed locked on hers, not on the beast. Everyone runs, he said softly. But I don't see a monster. The words struck her harder than any stone ever had. For a moment, she forgot the crowd, the whispers, the fear. For a moment it was just her pet, and this strange human who dared to stand where no one else would. Her chest tightened. Was he foolish, brave, or something else entirely? The human gave a small, almost playful smile. What's its name? The crowd gasped again. No one had ever asked that either. No one wanted to know. To them, the creature had no name, only terror. The girl swallowed hard. Her voice was shaky when she answered. Its name is Koresh. The human nodded slowly, as if tasting the word. Koresh. Strong name. The beast's growl faded. It tilted its head at the human, as if puzzled by his calmness. The glow in its eyes softened, just slightly. The girl felt her heart racing. Something was happening that had never happened before. Someone was not afraid. Someone was speaking to her, not running from her. Someone was looking at her, not just at the beast. And in that moment, a spark of something new flickered inside her chest. Hope. But hope was dangerous. She knew the crowd would not stay silent for long. Already she heard angry voices rising. Foolish human. Stay away from her. It will kill you. The guards stepped forward, hands on their weapons, ready to strike if the beast moved. The air grew heavier, the tension sharp like a blade. The girl's heart sank. She wanted to tell the human to leave, to save himself. She wanted to shout that no one could stand against their fear. But her voice caught in her throat. And then the human did the unthinkable. He took another step closer. Her pet stood tall, muscles tense, claws digging into the ground. The crowd screamed, sure it would attack. But the human raised his hand slowly, calmly, and spoke in a firm, steady voice. I don't fear you, he said to the beast, because I know you're more than fear. The creature froze. The marketplace fell into complete silence. And the alien girl, for the first time in her life, looked at someone who did not see her as a curse, but as something more. First contact. The marketplace still stood frozen in silence. People stared wide-eyed, unable to believe what they had just seen. A human man had stepped toward the alien girl's pet and spoken without fear. For most, it was madness. For her, it was impossible. The alien girl's chest tightened as she watched him. The heat of dozens of eyes burned against her, but she could not look away from the human. His presence was strange, calm in a place filled with panic. He didn't shift nervously like the others. He didn't draw a weapon. He only stood there, close enough for the beast to strike, and spoke as if speaking to an old friend. Her pet, Koresh, lowered its massive head. Its ember-like eyes locked on the human. The creature's nostrils flared as it inhaled his scent, a deep growl rumbling in its chest. The crowd held its breath. At any second, they expected blood. But then, something none had ever seen before happened. Koresh stopped growling. Its claws dug less harshly into the dirt. Its eyes, once glowing bright with warning, softened. The beast tilted its head slightly, as if studying the human with curiosity instead of rage. The alien girl's eyes widened. Impossible, she whispered. The human glanced at her. His expression wasn't smug or proud, it was gentle, almost reassuring. He's not angry, he said quietly. He's just protecting you. The girl's lips parted, but she couldn't speak. How could he know that? How could a stranger understand something even her own people refused to see? The silence broke when someone in the crowd shouted, "Keep away from her, fool!" Others joined in. "That beast will eat you alive. Guards, stop him before it's too late." Two guards stepped forward, their hands gripping long spears. The alien girl's stomach twisted. If they provoked Koresh, it would defend itself, and the marketplace would turn into chaos. She stepped between the guards and the human quickly, her voice trembling. "Stop! He has done nothing." Her sudden cry startled the crowd. People gasped. The girl never raised her voice, never spoke at all unless she had to. Now she was protecting the very human who had approached her. The guards hesitated. One frowned, glaring at the man. "Why risk your life for her? Don't you see what she drags behind her? That monster doesn't belong here." The human's eyes stayed steady, his voice calm. "Fear blinds you. I don't see a monster. I see loyalty." Koresh let out a sharp snort, as if agreeing. The crowd murmured nervously, unsure what to believe. The alien girl turned, looking at the human fully now. "Why?" she asked softly. Her voice was low, almost lost in the noise, but he heard her. "Why do you not fear him like the others?" The human studied her for a long moment before answering. His eyes weren't on her pet, but on her face. "Because fear lies. I've seen dangerous things before, but I've also seen love where others only saw danger. Sometimes you just have to look deeper." Her heart raced. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had ever looked at her without suspicion or hatred. She felt something stir inside her, something she had thought was long dead. Trust. But the crowd would not allow peace. A stone flew from the side, striking the dirt near her feet. Someone shouted, "Drive them out!" Others picked up the cry. Fear turned quickly into anger. Koresh roared, its body rising tall, wings spreading wide to shield her. The marketplace erupted in screams as people scattered in terror. The guards raised their weapons again, their faces pale with panic. The human didn't flinch. Instead, he stepped closer, placing himself between the girl, her beast, and the crowd. He raised one hand calmly, speaking not to the guards but to everyone. "You see teeth and claws and think only of death," he said firmly. "But look closer. He doesn't strike without reason. He defends. He protects. Maybe you should ask yourselves, who taught you to fear more than to understand?" His words cut through the panic like a blade. The shouting quieted, though the fear still clung to the air. The guards hesitated, lowering their weapons just slightly. The alien girl looked at him with disbelief. Who was this man? Why would he speak for her, defend her, when he had no reason to? She had met many humans before, but none like him. Koresh growled again, but not in rage. It was a warning, protective. And strangely, the girl noticed something she had never seen before. The beast's eyes no longer glowed at the human as if he were a threat. Instead, they seemed calmer, watchful, but not hostile. The human finally turned to her, his voice softening. "Come, let's leave this place. The crowd won't change today." Her breath caught. He wanted to walk beside her. He wanted to leave with her and Koresh, knowing what danger that would bring. The alien girl nodded slowly, her heart pounding in her chest. She took a cautious step, Koresh following closely behind. To her surprise, the human matched her pace, walking at her side as if he belonged there. The crowd parted in silence as they passed. Eyes widened, mouths hung open, but no one dared stop them. The sight was too strange, too unbelievable. A human walking beside the feared girl and her beast, unafraid. When they reached the edge of the marketplace, the girl finally whispered, "You are different." The human smiled faintly. Maybe, or maybe everyone else has forgotten what it means to look past fear. The girl lowered her eyes, but she could not hide the warmth spreading in her chest. For the first time in her life, she was not walking alone. And though she did not yet understand it, this moment was the beginning of something far greater than she had ever dreamed. The bond grows. The path leading out of the marketplace was quiet, lined with dusty stone walls and the fading glow of lanterns. The alien girl walked quickly, her hood pulled low, Koresh padding heavily behind her. Yet this time was different. For the first time, someone walked at her side. The human. She stole glances at him, unsure what to make of his calm stride. Most people kept as far away as possible, but he walked close, as if the beast looming behind them was nothing more than a dog on a leash. His steps were steady, his shoulders relaxed. He didn't even look back when Koresh snorted or hissed. The girl's heart raced. She was used to stares of hatred, to whispers and fear. But never this. Never someone who chose to stay. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely more than a whisper. "You? Why do you walk with me? You saw what they see." The human glanced at her, his eyes calm. "I saw more than what they see." She frowned, uncertain. "You are not afraid?" He shook his head. "Fear is easy. Understanding is harder. But I'd rather try." His words confused her, but they also warmed something deep inside her chest. She lowered her eyes, hiding her expression. Koresh growled softly behind them, but the sound was less threatening now, more protective, like a warning only for others, not for him. First signs of trust. They reached the edge of the settlement, where the land opened into rocky fields. The girl slowed her pace, turning to him. "You should leave," she said firmly. "The others, they will speak against you. They may punish you for walking with me." The human shrugged. "Let them talk. Their fear is theirs, not mine." Her throat tightened. She wanted to tell him to stop, to turn back, to save himself from the trouble she carried with her. Yet when she looked at him, she couldn't. His gaze was steady, and for the first time in her life, she felt less like a curse, and more like a person. Koresh lowered its massive body onto the ground, curling its tail around itself like a coiled snake. The human glanced at the beast, then back at her. "May I?" he asked, motioning toward the creature. Her eyes widened. You want to touch him? He nodded simply. No one touches Koresh, she whispered. Not even my people. He does not allow it. Then maybe, the human said softly. It's time someone did. Before she could protest, he stepped slowly toward the beast. Koresh rose, its scales rattling, its ember eyes glowing brighter. The girl's breath caught in her throat. One wrong move and blood would spill. But the human didn't flinch. He stopped just a step away and lowered himself to one knee, making himself smaller. He extended his hand slowly, his palm open, his movements calm and deliberate. Koresh growled low, the sound vibrating through the air. The girl whispered urgently, Stop. He will. But then it happened. The beast lowered its head and sniffed his hand. The crowd in the marketplace would have fainted at the sight. But here, in the quiet dusk, the impossible unfolded. Koresh pressed its muzzle against the human's hand, its glowing eyes softening. The girl gasped. Her knees felt weak. She had lived with Koresh for years, yet no one, not one person, had ever earned its trust like this. The human smiled faintly, running his hand gently along the creature's scaled head. See, he said quietly. Not a monster, just misunderstood. Tears pricked the corners of her eyes. She turned away quickly, ashamed of her weakness. But in her chest, something fragile and new was growing. Trust. A shared meal. That night, for the first time, she did not eat alone. They sat beneath a rocky ledge, a small fire crackling between them. The girl had bought dried fruit and bread from the market, enough for herself and Koresh. But the human shared his own food as well, a pouch of roasted nuts and a flask of water. Koresh lay nearby, its great body curled like a living wall, its ember eyes watching them both. Strangely, the beast no longer glared at the human with suspicion. Instead, it rested calmly, as though it accepted him. The girl ate quietly, stealing glances at her companion. Finally, she asked, What is your name? He looked up at her with a small smile. Daniel. She repeated it softly, testing the sound. Dan, I-L. He nodded. And yours? Her eyes lowered. She hesitated. Her name had been whispered only in hatred for so long. It felt heavy on her tongue. But somehow she wanted him to know. Lyra, she said finally. Daniel repeated it gently. Lyra. A good name. Her chest tightened again. No one had spoken her name with kindness in years. For a long time, they sat in silence, the fire crackling between them. But it wasn't an uncomfortable silence. For once it felt safe. The walls began to break. In the days that followed, Daniel sought her out again. He found her walking near the edge of the settlement, where fewer people dared to go. Sometimes he carried supplies, sometimes stories, sometimes nothing at all but his company. At first, Lyra resisted. She told him to leave, told him it was dangerous to be seen with her. But he always came back, smiling as if danger meant nothing. And slowly, against her own walls, she began to let him in. She learned that he was not rich, not powerful, not a soldier. He was simply a wanderer, someone who had traveled from place to place, never staying long. He spoke of the stars, of faraway worlds, of strange creatures he had met. His voice carried warmth, and when he spoke, she found herself listening with a heart that ached for more. And he learned of her, of the loneliness she carried, of Koresh, who had bonded with her when she was a child, of the way her people had cast her aside because they feared the beast that never left her side. Daniel did not flinch at her words. He did not judge her. Instead, he listened, truly listened. For the first time in her life, Lyra felt seen. The moment of change. One evening, as the sun sank low and painted the sky in fire, Daniel walked with Lyra and Koresh along the ridge. The wind blew gently, carrying the scent of earth and stone. Lyra stopped suddenly, looking out at the horizon. Her voice was quiet, but heavy. They will never accept me. Not with him. She nodded toward Koresh. To them I am only danger. Only curse. Daniel looked at her for a long moment. Then he stepped closer, his voice calm but strong. Then they're blind. I see more than that. I see someone who's stronger than they'll ever understand. Her heart ached at his words. She wanted to turn away, but his gaze held her. And then she realized Koresh was watching him too. The beast's ember eyes were calm, almost approving. In that moment, under the fading sun, something shifted between them all. The bond that began in the marketplace grew deeper, unspoken but undeniable. Where others saw fear, Daniel saw worth. Where others fled, he stayed. And slowly, Lyra began to believe that maybe she wasn't cursed after all. The hidden truth. The days grew into weeks, and with every passing moment, Daniel walked more boldly at Lyra's side. The whispers in the marketplace grew sharper, the stares colder, but he did not falter. Wherever Lyra went, he went. Wherever Koresh padded, heavy and watchful, Daniel was there too, calm, steady, unafraid. For Lyra, it was something she had never imagined. For years, she had lived in silence, carrying her burden alone. Now, there was someone who spoke her name without fear, who looked into her eyes without judgment. Yet with that warmth came a new weight, fear not of rejection, but of truth. Because Daniel did not know everything. Not yet, and part of her wished he never would. The strange night. It was late one evening when it began. They had returned from the fields outside the settlement, Koresh walking at their side with unusual restlessness. The creature's ember eyes flicked toward the sky, its scales rattling in the cool night wind. Daniel noticed first. "He's uneasy," he said softly. Lyra nodded, stroking Koresh's thick neck. "He feels things before others do." Daniel frowned. "Feels what?" She didn't answer. Not yet. Instead, she urged Koresh toward the shelter of the rocks where they often camped. The fire crackled between them, but the silence around her heart burned louder. Finally, Daniel leaned forward, his voice calm but insistent. "Lyra, I've asked nothing of you, but I need to know. Why do they fear him so much? Why do they fear you?" Her breath caught. She lowered her eyes to the firelight, watching the flames dance. For a long moment, she said nothing. But Koresh shifted closer, laying its heavy head against her lap as if urging her to speak. Her voice came quiet, broken, but each word carried the weight of years. "Because Koresh is not only my pet. He is my curse." The past revealed. Daniel stayed silent, giving her space. She took a shaky breath and continued. "When I was a child, our world was at war. Raiders came from the skies, burning villages, taking lives. My people were desperate. They created beasts, living weapons, born to fight, born to kill." She touched Koresh's head gently, her hand trembling. "He was one of them." Daniel's eyes widened, but he didn't interrupt. "They were called soulfangs," she whispered. "Created from fire and shadow, bound to chosen keepers. My family was chosen. Koresh was given to me when I was still young. Too young." Her voice cracked, and she pressed her forehead against Koresh's warm scales. "He fought for us. He saved me more times than I can count. But when the battle ended, when peace returned, the people looked at us with fear. They said the soulfangs could not be trusted. They said their hunger for blood would never fade." She closed her eyes, tears burning. "One night they turned on us. They killed the others, every soulfang, every keeper. Only Koresh and I escaped. We ran. We hid. And from that day I was no longer Lyra, the child of my people. I was Lyra, the cursed girl with the monster at her side." Her words fell heavy into the night. The fire crackled softly, the only sound between them. Daniel's response. Daniel's heart tightened as he listened. He looked at Koresh no longer just as a beast, but as a survivor scarred by war, rejected by the very people it had fought to protect. Then he looked at Lyra, and saw the weight she had carried since childhood. "Lyra," he said softly. She shook her head quickly, wiping at her eyes. "Now you know. Now you see what I am. You should leave. You should fear me as they do." But Daniel leaned forward, his voice steady. "No, I don't see a curse. I see someone who survived when no one else did. You and Koresh, you're not monsters. You're proof that even in war, loyalty can live. Her eyes widened, shimmering in the firelight. You cannot mean that. He nodded firmly. I do. Fear makes people blind. They see claws and fire and think only of danger. I see a girl who protected her friend, and a beast who protected his keeper. That's not a curse. That's a bond. Lyra's breath hitched, her heart pounding. No one, not even her own family before they were gone, had spoken those words. For years she had carried shame. And now, with just a few sentences, Daniel was tearing down the walls around her heart. Koresh lifted its head slightly, its ember eyes studying Daniel. Then, with a low rumble almost like approval, the beast stretched out beside him, resting close as if acknowledging his place in their circle. Daniel smiled faintly. See? Even he knows I'm right. For the first time, Lyra laughed softly through her tears. The sound was fragile, like something unused for too long, but it was real. The burden of fear. Still, even as warmth grew between them, shadows lingered. Lyra lowered her eyes again. You don't understand. The people will never see it this way. To them, Koresh is death. To them, I will always be cursed. Daniel's gaze hardened. Then let them be blind. Their fear doesn't decide who you are. Her chest ached at his words. She wanted to believe them, but she had lived too long in fear to let it go so easily. She whispered, and if they come for us again? If they try to kill him? To kill me? Daniel looked at her, his voice firm as iron. Then they'll have to go through me first. Her heart stopped for a moment, stunned by the certainty in his tone. He was not joking. He was not just saying it to comfort her. He meant it. She turned away quickly, hiding the tears that returned to her eyes. A fragile hope. That night, Lyra did not sleep easily. Memories of the war, of screams and fire, of Koresh's first kill and her people's betrayal haunted her. Yet beside the fire, Daniel slept calmly, his hand resting near Koresh's thick scales as though no danger existed. She watched him, her chest tight. For years she had walked in darkness. And now here was a light, a human who dared to see her not as cursed, but as worthy of love and trust. Perhaps it was foolish. Perhaps it was dangerous. But as the night stretched on, a fragile hope grew inside her. Maybe, just maybe, she was not as alone as she thought. The threat returns. The days that followed were fragile and uncertain. Daniel stayed close to Lyra, walking beside her in places where no one else dared to come. She grew more comfortable with him, even daring to smile when Koresh rested calmly near his side. Yet around them the whispers grew louder. In the marketplace, eyes followed them with suspicion. Men muttered to each other as they passed. Mothers pulled their children behind them, and the guards kept their hands on their weapons. Daniel noticed all of it, but he didn't stop. He carried himself with the same steady calm, though his jaw often tightened when the insults grew louder. They'll turn on us, Lyra said one evening, her voice low as they sat near the fire. They won't let this last. Koresh and I, we don't belong. Daniel shook his head. Fear always looks for someone to blame. That doesn't mean you're wrong to exist. She wanted to believe him, but deep down, she knew the storm was coming. And she was right. The council's decision. It began with the Council of Elders. They had tolerated Lyra's presence at the far edge of the settlement, so long as she stayed away. But now, with a human openly walking at her side, people claimed it was proof of corruption, proof that the beast had bewitched him. The elders met in secret, their voices sharp with fear. She cannot be allowed to stay. The creature is a weapon. If it turns on us, we will all die. And this human, he has already fallen under its influence. He endangers us all. By the end of the meeting, their decision was clear. Lyra and Koresh would be removed by force if necessary. Whispers become threats. The next morning, Daniel and Lyra returned to the marketplace for supplies. But this time, the silence of fear was replaced by open hostility. You shouldn't be here, a woman shouted, throwing rotten fruit at their feet. Take your beast and leave, another man growled. Daniel's eyes flashed with anger. but he didn't raise his voice. He stepped in front of Lyra, shielding her from the crowd's growing aggression. "They see only what they want to see," he murmured to her. But Lyra's heart pounded. Koresh growled, low and dangerous, its scales rattling as the crowd pressed closer. The beast's eyes glowed bright, ready to protect her. The guards finally stepped forward, spears raised. "Enough!" their captain barked. His gaze was fixed on Koresh. "The council has spoken. The girl and her creature must leave the settlement. If they do not, we will make them leave." Gasps ran through the crowd. Some cheered, others nodded in grim satisfaction. Lyra felt the weight of 1,000 stares pressing down on her. Her worst fear was coming true. Daniel moved quickly, his body tense. "And where are they supposed to go?" he demanded. "Out there, beyond the walls? Into the wastelands?" The captain sneered. "It is not our concern what happens after. The beast is a threat. We will not wait for it to strike." Lyra's breath shook. She knew what came next. The guards would not let them go peacefully. They would provoke Koresh, force him to fight, and then use that as proof that he was dangerous. Her eyes filled with tears as she whispered, "Daniel, please go. Save yourself." But Daniel stepped closer to her instead, his voice like steel. "No, I'm not leaving you. Not now, not ever." The spark of conflict. The guards moved forward. Koresh roared, its body rising tall, wings spreading wide in a display of power. The crowd screamed, stumbling back in terror. The captain pointed his spear. "See? It is a monster. It will destroy us all." Daniel threw up his hands, stepping between the guards and Koresh. His voice boomed across the marketplace. "Open your eyes. If Koresh wanted you dead, you would already be dead. He has not harmed you. He has protected her. Protected me. He is not the monster here. Your fear is." The crowd faltered, torn between terror and doubt. But the council's order was law, and the guards tightened their grip on their weapons. Lyra clutched Daniel's sleeve, her voice shaking. "They won't stop. They will kill him. And me too." Daniel turned to her, his expression soft but unyielding. "Then we make our stand. Together." Her breath caught. For the first time, someone had not told her to run. Someone had chosen to fight at her side. The attack. The captain shouted, "Take them!" The guards surged forward. Spears gleamed in the light as they rushed at Koresh. The beast's roar split the air, shaking the very ground beneath their feet. It struck with its tail, smashing weapons aside, but held its ground beside Lyra instead of attacking outright. Daniel grabbed a fallen staff, spinning it in his hands with the skill of someone who had fought before. He struck one guard across the arm, disarming him, then planted himself in front of Lyra like a shield. The crowd screamed, scattering in panic as the battle raged. Dust rose into the air, shouts and roars echoing through the settlement. But something unexpected happened. Even as Koresh fought back, it did not kill. It knocked weapons aside, pushed men back, but every strike was controlled. It fought not as a mindless beast, but as a protector. Daniel shouted over the chaos. "Look at him. He's holding back. He's not your monster. He's her guardian." The guards hesitated, doubt flickering in their eyes. But the captain, blinded by fear and pride, raised his spear again, aiming straight for Lyra. Daniel's heart lurched. He lunged forward, but Koresh was faster. The beast swung its massive body, knocking the captain to the ground. Its glowing eyes burned with fury, its claws pressing into the dirt just inches from his chest. The captain froze, his face pale with terror. Koresh growled, the sound deep and powerful, but it did not strike the final blow. Lyra's voice rang out, strong and clear for the first time. "He spares you, though you would kill us. Look at him. Look, and tell me again that he is only a monster." The marketplace fell silent. The people stared at Koresh, at Daniel, at Lyra standing tall with her head held high. And for the first time, doubt began to outweigh fear. Aftermath of the stand. The captain scrambled back, his pride shattered. The guards lowered their weapons, uncertain. The crowd whispered, their voices no longer filled only with terror, but with questions. Daniel stood beside Lyra, his chest heaving, his eyes blazing. He reached for her hand, gripping it tightly. "You're not alone anymore. Whatever comes, we face it together." Lyra's heart pounded, tears filling her eyes. Not of fear, but of something else. For the first time, she believed his words. Koresh lowered its head, pressing close to both of them. Its ember eyes glowed not with rage, but with fierce loyalty. And though the council still feared them, though the settlement still whispered, a new seed had been planted in that moment. The seed of truth. That Koresh was not a monster. That Lyra was not cursed. That one human's courage could stand against the weight of fear and change everything. Humanity's choice. The dust of the fight still lingered in the air, the smell of sweat and fear heavy across the settlement square. People stood frozen, their eyes darting between Koresh's massive body and the human who stood beside the alien girl. Daniel's chest heaved, but his grip on the staff did not falter. Lyra's hand trembled in his, her eyes wide with both fear and wonder. And Koresh, the so-called monster, stood above them like a living wall, its ember eyes locked on the guards, daring them to move closer. For a long moment no one spoke. Then the captain staggered to his feet, his spear cracked, his pride wounded more than his body. His voice shook with rage. "You see, this is what we warned you about. Look at it. The beast attacks our guard. It defies our law. It must die." The crowd murmured in confusion. Some nodded, fear still heavy in their hearts. Others shifted uneasily, whispering about what they had seen. The beast holding back, the human fighting beside it, the girl's voice breaking through their fear. Daniel stepped forward. His voice was calm, but every word struck like iron. "No, what you saw tonight is not a monster. You saw restraint. You saw protection. He could have killed every one of you, and he did not. He fights only to defend her. Can you not see the truth?" The crowd wavered. The captain sneered. "Truth? The truth is fear. Fear keeps us alive." Daniel's eyes burned. He raised his voice, not just to the captain but to everyone watching. "No. Fear blinds you. Fear chains you. You call her cursed, but she is the one who endured when the rest of you turned your backs. You call him a monster, but he has shown more mercy than any of you would. If that is a curse, then maybe you should ask yourselves, who here is truly cursed?" The murmurs grew louder. People looked at one another, doubt flickering across their faces. The captain's jaw tightened. "This is madness," the captain spat. "He's bewitched you. That thing has poisoned your mind." Daniel turned sharply to him, his voice sharp as a blade. "No. What poisons minds is fear. What poisons hearts is hatred. I've seen enough of it to last a lifetime, and I choose something different. I choose to stand with her. The humans stand." He turned, his hand still gripping Lyra's. His voice lowered slightly, but it carried enough to reach the crowd. "She asked me once why I was not afraid. The truth is simple, because I looked beyond claws and scales. I looked into her eyes, and I saw a soul worth protecting. That is all I need to know." Lyra's breath caught. Her eyes shimmered with tears she could not hold back. In front of everyone, he had chosen her. Not just her, but Koresh as well. He had thrown away safety, reputation, and comfort for the bond they had built. Koresh lowered its head, pressing it gently toward Daniel as if sealing that bond in silence. The crowd was no longer silent out of fear, but out of shock. Some still looked on with suspicion, but others shifted uneasily, as though Daniel's words had cracked something in their hearts. The test. But the captain would not yield. He raised his broken spear, shouting, "Do not listen to him. The council has spoken. They must die tonight, before they bring ruin on us all." The guards hesitated, their eyes darting between their leader and the massive creature before them. Their hands tightened on their weapons, but their movements were slow, uncertain. Daniel raised the staff again, standing tall between them and Lyra. His voice boomed, "Then you'll have to kill me first." Gasps erupted from the crowd. The captain's face twisted in fury. So be it. He lunged forward, broken spear aimed at Daniel's chest. But Koresh moved faster. The beast slammed its tail into the ground, the shockwave knocking the captain sprawling once more. Daniel did not strike. He did not move to finish the fight. He simply stood tall, his staff held steady, his body unyielding. His choice was clear. He would protect Lyra and Koresh to the very end, even if it meant his life. And in that moment, the crowd saw something no fear could erase. Courage. The turning of hearts. An elder from the council finally stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Captain, enough." The captain spun toward her in disbelief. "You would side with them?" She shook her head slowly. "I saw the beast spare your life. I saw the human choose compassion over hatred. I cannot deny what my eyes witnessed." The crowd murmured louder now. One by one, voices rose. "He speaks truth. It did not kill him. The human fights for her. Why would he risk his life if she were cursed?" The guards lowered their weapons at last, stepping back. The captain looked around, seeing the tide turn against him, but his rage burned too deep. "You are all fools," he spat. "It will be your doom." With that, he stormed from the square, his authority shattered. Humanity's choice. The silence that followed was different than before. Not filled with fear, but with something else, uncertainty, perhaps even hope. Daniel lowered the staff and turned back to Lyra. Her eyes were wide, her cheeks wet with tears, her voice trembling. "You stood for me, for us, in front of them all." He gave a small, tired smile. "It wasn't a hard choice. Not for me." Her breath caught, her heart pounding. For so long, she had lived as an outcast, cursed and feared. And yet, this human had not only accepted her. He had declared it openly, risking everything. Koresh rumbled low, pressing close to both of them. Its ember eyes glowed not with menace, but with fierce loyalty, as though it too had made its choice. The spark of something greater. As the people slowly drifted away, whispers filled the night. Some still muttered that fear was safer, but others looked back at Daniel with new eyes. One human had stood against their fear, and in doing so had planted a question none of them could erase. What if we were wrong? Lyra stood close to Daniel, her voice soft. "I don't understand you." Daniel chuckled lightly. "Most people don't. But I meant every word. You're not a curse, Lyra. You're strength. And Koresh isn't a monster. He's proof of loyalty greater than theirs." Her tears fell freely now, but for the first time, they were not only tears of pain. They were tears of hope. And in that moment, she realized something she had never dared believe. Her heart was no longer hers alone. Resolution and legacy. The square lay quiet after the captain's furious departure. Dust still hung in the air, and broken weapons littered the ground. The people stood in uneasy clusters, their eyes darting between Koresh's massive body and the human who still stood at Lyra's side. Daniel lowered the staff at last, his shoulders heavy with exhaustion, but his grip on Lyra's hand did not loosen. Koresh pressed close, a living wall of scales and fire, its glowing eyes watchful but calm. No one moved for a long time. Then, an elder stepped forward. Her voice trembled, but her words carried across the square. "I have lived long," she said, "long enough to know that fear is an easy chain to wear. But tonight, I saw something I cannot deny. The beast did not kill when it had the chance. The girl did not curse us when we cursed her. And the human..." She paused, her gaze resting on Daniel. "The human chose compassion when all of us chose hate." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some still looked on with suspicion, but others nodded slowly. The tide had shifted, even if only by inches. Acceptance in small steps. In the days that followed, things did not change overnight. People still avoided Koresh, still whispered when Lyra passed. But the venom in their words had dulled. They had seen too much to cling fully to their fear. Daniel remained by Lyra's side, undeterred. He worked among the people, repairing tools, helping with fields, offering his strength where it was needed. At first, no one wanted to accept his help, but slowly, necessity won over suspicion. And when they saw Koresh lying quietly at the edge of the fields while Daniel worked, some began to wonder if perhaps the human had been right. Children were the first to dare. One boy, braver than the rest, crept close to Koresh one morning, tossing a stick toward the beast. Koresh tilted its great head, sniffed the stick, and pushed it back gently with its nose. The boy squealed in delight and ran to tell his friends. Soon, whispers turned into stories. The beast listens. The beast plays. The adults still held onto their fear, but doubt had begun to crack the walls around their hearts. Lyra's healing. For Lyra, it was like breathing new air. She had lived so long with her head bowed, her heart wrapped in chains of guilt. Now, for the first time, she walked the paths of the settlement without shrinking under every stare. People still stepped aside, but some nodded cautiously, and that alone was more than she had ever hoped for. At night, she and Daniel sat together by the fire. Koresh curled protectively nearby. Sometimes they spoke of simple things, memories, dreams, small joys. Other times, silence was enough. One evening, under a sky of countless stars, Lyra finally spoke the words she had carried in her heart for weeks. "You changed everything," she whispered. Daniel looked at her, his expression soft. "No, I only reminded them that change was possible. You and Koresh did the rest." Her throat tightened. "I was ready to be alone forever. But then you stayed." He squeezed her hand gently. "I didn't stay out of pity. I stayed because I saw you. All of you. And I couldn't walk away." Her eyes shimmered. She lowered her head, but a faint smile touched her lips. For the first time, the weight of her past felt lighter. The captain's return. But peace is never without shadows. The captain, humiliated and enraged, did not forget. He disappeared from the settlement for several days, gathering men who still clung to fear and hatred. When he returned, it was not to reason but to finish what he had started. He arrived in the dead of night with a small band of loyalists, their weapons glinting under the moonlight. They moved toward Lyra's shelter with murder in their eyes. But Koresh was waiting. The beast rose from the shadows like a mountain, its roar splitting the night. Daniel leapt to his feet, staff in hand, standing beside Lyra. The loyalists hesitated, fear flooding their faces. They had expected an easy kill. Instead, they stood before a united force, human, alien girl, and the very beast they called a monster. The captain shouted, "Strike, before it destroys us all." But none moved. The men looked at Koresh's burning eyes, at Daniel's unwavering stance, at Lyra standing tall with her head held high, and their courage broke. One by one, they lowered their weapons and backed away. The captain, left alone, trembled with rage. He lunged forward in desperation, his blade raised. But Daniel was faster. He disarmed him with a sharp strike, knocking the weapon into the dirt. Koresh loomed close, its massive jaws opening, its growl shaking the earth. Lyra stepped forward, her voice clear. "No, Koresh." The beast froze, then lowered its head, obeying her command. The captain fell to his knees, staring in disbelief. Why spare me?" Lyra's eyes shone with quiet strength. "Because we are not the monsters you believe us to be." The captain was cast out of the settlement that night, his power shattered. And with his exile, the last barrier of fear began to fall. Legacy of the human choice. In the weeks that followed, things changed. Slowly, carefully. The people began to approach Lyra and Koresh not with hatred, but with curiosity. The children came first, then a few brave adults, until one day a farmer even asked if Koresh could guard his fields at night. Daniel's words spread far beyond the settlement. Travelers carried the story of the human who stood beside the cursed girl and her beast, who faced down fear with nothing but courage. They called it a tale of love, of defiance, of what it meant to be human. And for Lyra, it was more than a story. It was freedom. She no longer walked with her head bowed. She walked with Daniel at her side, Koresh close behind, her heart lighter than it had ever been. The final moment. One evening, as the sun sank low and painted the sky in shades of gold and fire, Daniel and Lyra stood on the ridge above the settlement. Koresh sat beside them, its eyes glowing softly in the fading light. Lyra turned to him, her voice quiet but full of meaning. You stole my heart, Daniel. Not because you were fearless, but because you chose me when no one else would. Daniel smiled gently. And I'll keep choosing you. Always. Koresh rumbled low, as if approving, its great head bowing toward them both. Lyra leaned against Daniel's shoulder, watching the horizon. For the first time in her life, the future did not feel like a burden. Felt like hope. And in the silence of that golden evening, one truth rang clear, not just for them, but for all who heard their story. Where fear rules, humanity chooses courage. Where others see monsters, humanity sees love. And sometimes, one human's choice is enough to change everything.